Today, we are going to be taking our brain and putting it through a blender of power scaling. I came across a character that is beyond really anything I could have previously conceived of. And not only do I want to talk about this character, but I want to put this character in the context of other fiction that we have, and then even try to push past this character. I don't know if we're going to be able to come up with something more powerful than this character, but we are going to try, and I think we're going to get close. So what we have here is a pyramid, and like many others before us, we are asking the question, who's most powerful? Not who's the most powerful person, who's the most powerful creature, who's the most powerful character, maybe not even who's the most powerful entity. None of these boxes may actually be able to contain the thing that we will be discussing. But for now, we're going to start at the bottom of this pyramid. I'm calling them the Unbeatables. They're just these characters that, for one reason or another, are ridiculously overpowered. Okay? So this is typically where power scaling can be at its most fun. These are characters that have flaws, have limits, and because of that, make the discussions very interesting and fun. It doesn't really break our minds. It's pretty simple. It's kind of like power scaling's bread and butter. Let's talk a little bit about what we got in this category. So we got our boy Superman. He really is unbeatable so long as you are staying within the confines of fiction and not trying to be meta in any way. Other characters in this category would be like Godzilla, Thor, Hulk from Marvel. These are characters that are just really, really, really powerful. There's no way these characters are really going to be breaking our brains. Now, what we might want to talk about real quick is how I'm using the word power scaling and kind of what we're going to be doing. Power scaling can be silly, right? It can be a little cringy. You can run into discussions where you have to ask yourself, what are we even talking about? In one of my last videos, we were talking about gorillas versus 100 people, and King Kong Monsterverse came into the discussion, as he should, and it made me remember the power scaling debate of how King Kong is said to move at light speed. Now, this to me is when power scaling gets silly, because King Kong is an oversized gorilla, and light speed, as we know it, is as fast as one thing could possibly go. I will have a caveat on that in a second for my power scaling connoisseurs. But just to finish my tangent here, King Kong is said to move at light speed because he was able to block Godzilla's blast. Now, Godzilla's atomic breath is said and shown to be relatively the speed of light in many instances. But I think when you see King Kong blocking it, it is quite a jump to then assume that King Kong can now move at light speed. There's just so many other ways of interpreting it, right? You could say that King Kong got lucky and just happened to block it. That's already way more plausible. You could say that Godzilla's breath actually is not the speed of light because King Kong blocked it, right? Like, you can go both ways with it. And if you really just want to be logical, you could say that Godzilla takes 15 business days to charge up his breath and fire it, and he's obviously going to be aiming his mouth, his gaping maw, at whatever he's shooting at. So it's not far-fetched to say that King Kong could have just seen where Godzilla was about to shoot. I do want to say that I don't think that there's any right or wrong answers objectively. All of this stuff is full of contradictions. It's fiction. It's not meant to be a hard science. But when we're doing our best to have fun and just attempt to rationalize what every character can do, I think we need to be reasonable and use a little bit of common sense just to keep things from getting too out of hand. Once we start doing like quantum trigonometry to determine, the speed and, force of a punch, I think we've lost our way. But anyway, tangent over. we're coming back to the bottom of our list here, the bottom of our pyramid. It's already some of the most powerful characters you know, and that should just go to show how powerful we're going to be going to at the top of the pyramid. So anyway, Superman, Godzilla, Hulk, anime characters like One Punch Man, Goku, these are characters that are super, super, super powerful, but aren't going to be breaking our brains. This is the fun part. Now, we can start to break our brains in this tier a little bit when we start to talk about multiversal beings. So, in my very last video, when we were talking about magical items and the Omnitrix was brought up. And if you know anything about Ben 10, he's got an alien called Alien X that essentially transcends his own universe. So, according to what a multiversal being is, it's a being that once it becomes multiversal, in Ben 10's case, once he becomes Alien X, he then transcends his own universe and essentially has the ability to delete or create universes at will. And there's, of course, an infinite number of these things, right? What a multiversal entity is something that exists beyond all the other universes. Here is where immediately my head went on how this makes no sense. First off, if there's infinite universes, and by default meaning infinite versions of Ben 10, then there should also be infinite versions of him turning into Alien X, meaning there should be infinite Alien X's in this void, right? Where are all the other Alien X's, right? And you might say, this would be the best way of explaining it, in that whenever a being becomes multiversal, all of those entities converge into one being, perhaps. You could say that. But the weird thing is, Ben 10, for example, has an identity attached to a single universe. There was that scene where his universe, quote, his universe, is getting destroyed around him, and he had to recreate it. It doesn't make any sense to say his universe if for whatever reason Alien X is a composite of all universes that have a Alien X available Ben 10. I know we're already starting to melt our brain a little bit. If you're not following, essentially what I'm saying is, if you have a Ben 10 that can transcend a universe and you have infinite universes, every universe should have a Ben 10 that does that, and you should be able to see all these other Ben 10s, but we don't see them. We don't see them. So already we're running into some issues. But we're still at the bottom of this pyramid, so let's keep moving. Let's push it. The reason we can go ahead and skip pretty much every character on this tier is because they're all bound by one thing. And that is bound by their own fictional universe or multiverse or omniverse. They are not meta. They can't reference themselves, right? They can't reference the story they're in. They are powerful within their story, but they cannot leave their story. There are characters, though, that seemingly do this. So on the low end, you have people like Deadpool, Gwenpool. These are characters that can manipulate what they're in a meta sense. Like, you can see Deadpool in a video game taking the health bar of another character and breaking it, which means they die. That is Deadpool being able to reference the fact that he's a character in a game, something that his opponent has no shot of doing, and therefore has no shot of really beating him, right? But he's still limited in that the writer is writing him to only do this in certain situations, right? He's not literally controlling himself. He's not a self-conscious entity. He's being written to be meta. So we're still not quite as powerful. We can scale it up a little bit more to characters in Marvel like the One Above All, or in DC, the Presence. In Ben 10, it would be like Alien X, I suppose. But these are characters that have been pretty clearly shown to represent the writer themselves. If you really want to see this in action, watch Rick and Morty. Rick Sanchez literally fights his own writers. Of course, the writers are writing it as such, so we're entering kind of like a paradoxical loop of wait, so if this character can fight the writer, but the writer is writing the character to fight the writer, then we're kind of stuck in a loop, right? But it's not that hard to comprehend. Our brain is absolutely melting at this moment, though, but it's still something we can kind of think about. So that's tier 2. That it's the characters that can be meta. It's the characters that can transcend their fiction in a way and reference the writer themselves. That's going to beat the tier below it because it doesn't really matter how hard you can punch. Superman can punch through as many planets as he wants. If there's a character that can say, Superman no longer can punch planets, then, well, now if that's law, it doesn't matter what Superman can do. There's a lot of characters like this. Some Marvel characters like Scarlet Witch in certain instances can basically become this. There are a lot of characters that can do this, and these characters are going to absolutely win against characters that can't. So, we are at this level where we have essentially characters that are the writers. But before we move up to the final tier that at least I can comprehend, we have to talk about the writers themselves. Not characters that represent the writers, but literally you and me. That's how powerful we're getting here. I can right now write a story that says, Superman flies at me, I dodge it, and then punch him. Superman dies. I can write that. It'd be fan fiction and not canon, obviously, but whoever is writing a Superman comic could write that. And that means we, you and me, are more powerful than every other character in fiction. If you are a hardcore power scaler, I already know what you might be thinking. There are a lot of logical fallacies within power scaling. The one fallacy that you might be thinking of is the appeal to reality. This is when someone takes a fictional character and attempts to define them by the rules of reality instead of the rules of their own fiction. So if I were to engage in the fallacy of appealing to reality, then I would be saying something like, Superman can't fly the speed of light because nothing can go faster than the speed of light. If I were to say something like that, then I am taking Superman and comparing him to the real world, which is not what he's meant to be compared to. He is compared to his fictional DC universe. And in a fictional universe, you can have characters that fly faster than the speed of light, because all it takes is a writer to write it as such. If I write down characters in this world are capable of flying faster than the speed of light, well, then I have just made it so in that fictional universe, not in reality, of course. So if you were to somehow take Superman and extrapolate him to another fictional universe, you'd have to take with him his own physics. So that's not what I'm doing. What I am doing is I'm saying the writer, you and me, may actually be bested by something that we have created in a fictional context. That is the top tier here. So if you're not even able to comprehend what I just said, then you've come to the right place. We're going to break it down and we're going to completely melt our brains until our last brain cell can comprehend what we're talking about. So we have reached the final tier, and this is when the man himself, H.P. Lovecraft, comes into the mix. So what we're dealing with now is a creation of H.P. Lovecraft that will essentially break our minds. And so let's get into it. So the character I would like to just jump to, its name is Azathoth. Azathoth. If you haven't heard of Azathoth, then you are in for a treat. I had not heard of Azathoth, and so I absolutely wanted to share it. But essentially what he is a other god, as he's defined. He is an entity that exists beyond our comprehension. But there are lots of creatures and characters and entities like that in H.P. Lovecraft, in the Cthulhu mythos. And I'm jumping straight to Azathoth because I do believe he's the most powerful. There are, for my Lovecraftian experts out there, other gods that could be deemed more powerful. I believe Yog-Sothoth or whatever is defined as everything and therefore could be defined as more powerful than Azathoth. But here's what Azathoth is, and here is why I think he's most powerful. And for the Cthulhu mythos people out there, just bear with me. I know I'm about to say something you may disagree with. Just bear with me. So Azathoth is, in essence, the dreamer god. Known as the blind idiot god, many say that Azathoth is a god that dreams all of reality. Now, this isn't literally stated by Lovecraft, so I'm gonna throw a bone to my Cthulhu connoisseurs. It's not literally stated, but it is kind of guessed upon that this old deity called Mana Sud Yushai or something. It's this old deity that is clearly a dreamer god, inspired Azathoth. So let's just break down why Azathoth can be deemed extremely powerful. One, if you're Superman and you can punch through planets, well, both your body and those planets are part of Azathoth's dream. Okay, and again, we are just going to go ahead and use the version of Azathoth where he is a dreamer. You might call it the extended universe. You may not consider it canon, but here we are attempting to discover the most powerful character, and so we need to use the most powerful versions we can. So this is what we got. So we have Azathoth, who is dreaming everything. Everything we know of is a dream, right? Superman, a dream. The Incredible Hulk, all his anger, a dream. One Punch Man and everything he punches, a dream. Dr. Manhattan and all of his physics-bending powers, part of the dream. Scarlet Witch, chaos incarnate, part of the dream, right? Jean Grey, the life force of the universe, part of his dream. Everything is part of his dream, and if he wakes up, it all goes away. So, in that sense, he is seen to be powerful. Now, if you stick with me here, I'm going to explain why he is not actually the most powerful, but we'll get to that. So what we have here is a character that really seems to be unstoppable, and I want to then bring it back to why I brought up the writers. So the writers are us, and I think Azathoth, at least in our interpretation right now, is more powerful than even us. Think about this. H.P. Lovecraft sat down and wrote something like this. He wrote, Azathoth, a being beyond all comprehension, a being so inconceivable he is beyond concepts, the most important of which is the concept of authorship. Lovecraft literally sat down and created a creature that is beyond the ability of being created. Let that sink in. Just let that sink in. Azathoth is a being so beyond comprehension that he is beyond the act of authorship. H.P. Lovecraft created a character that can't be created. He authored a character that can't be authored. Our mind is broken now. When I learned about this, I was just blown away by that. I mean, H.P. Lovecraft made something that can't be unmade. I mean, literally. Even if H.P. Lovecraft were to try to redact it and say, actually, Azathoth is beyond everything except authorship. If he were to try to do that, well, he just created a concept of Azathoth that is within the original Azathoth's dream. He can't undo it. He opened Pandora's box. As a writer in the real world, he created a fictional character that actually transcends him. That to me is so cool. Like, so cool. Like, that is a dream situation. Like, so much respect to him, even though he's a terrible guy. But can we now somehow stop the unstoppable? Can we create something that can kill Azathoth? And I think we can. Maybe. Let's think through it here. So, this is something I've never seen out there. We're creating it together right now. And I am calling it The Killing Dream. This is inspired absolutely by Lovecraft, in that I'm going to create a dream, or perhaps some form of combination of concepts and ideas that if they appear, even in your dream, they kill you. Even in your dream, it kills you. It's something that's so incomprehensibly deadly that even the minorest dream of it will kill you instantly. And of course, it'll die with you, but it doesn't need to perpetuate itself. It's something that can naturally occur. If you just so happen to think of or perceive of certain concepts or ideas in a certain order, you die. That's the idea of it. If it doesn't make sense to you, Well, it shouldn't, right? We are creating an idea that is going up against the idea of Azathoth, right? So does this kill Azathoth? Well, let's explore that. So Azathoth, if he is truly dreaming everything else, would be dreaming of the killing dream. And if the killing dream truly kills anything that dreams of it, then Azathoth would die. Now, of course, so would everything else, right? Everything else in the world, in reality, would die with Azathoth, including the killing dream. But it's still quite a feat that the killing dream could kill Azathoth. And if we are going by the definition of what we've defined, it would, right? If Azathoth dreams and the killing dream is so incomprehensibly deadly that it kills whatever dreams of it, then Azathoth is dead. But here's the thing. I just spoke that into existence. It's been created. And we're still here. Right? If we were in Azathoth's dream, then me creating that concept would have killed Azathoth. In fact, it would have killed all of us. So we have to ask, why are we still here? Right? Why are we not all seemingly gone? Why? I think, therefore I am, right? Rene Descartes, we're back to this. I know I exist, but I shouldn't if we are in Azathoth's dream, and the killing dream does, in fact, do its thing. So now we have to ask, why doesn't it work? Well, I think the reason it doesn't work is because when we say Azathoth dreams, we actually are just kind of guessing what he does. What he is actually doing is incomprehensible to us. And the closest thing we can do is say that he's dreaming us. And so when we conceive of a concept like the killing dream, it's something that is bound to our language, something that Azathoth, by definition, is not. And so in the end, Azathoth doesn't, the words we use for him, like dream, like entity, they just simply don't work. That's why we're still here. That's why the killing dream has not ended our existence. What does this mean? Let's just take a pause. Before we get into what this means, let's check in. Are you thoroughly lost? If you are thoroughly lost, let me know in the comments and I'll clear up any questions you have. But essentially what we've done so far is we've gone from fictional characters to meta characters to ourselves writing these characters to Azathoth, which is beyond even us in concept. And now we've created something that, through our own concepts, can kill him, but it hasn't. So why hasn't it? That's where we're at. The reason is because Azathoth is incomprehensible to us, and therefore there is no concept we can possibly create that could even begin to touch what he is. We don't actually know that for sure, but that's the hypothesis. Okay, so here we are. The final question. What exactly is Azathoth, right? If we can't define him by a dreaming god, if we can't define him by an entity, if he by definition can't be defined, then what is he? Well, he is, if anything, the concept of meaninglessness. He is nothing. He is something that is nothing, right? Anything we say that he is not true. So what we've hit is a paradox. We've hit something that we can't even describe, yet I am describing it right now, right? We've entered into a loop of semantics, of language that just breaks down. It will contradict itself. What I'm talking about right now essentially makes no sense. I'm rambling meaninglessness right now because that's the only way to even get close to describing Azathoth, and that's not even close, right? So is Azathoth the most powerful character? Even more powerful than me and you? Well, no, it isn't. Whatever it is not more powerful because the concept of power is something that's within Azathoth. It can't be applied. If we say Azathoth is powerful, just like saying he's a dreaming god, it's not true. It's just us attempting to somehow attach meaning to him. But no matter what we throw at him, it won't stick. There's no meaning, including power, that we can attach to him. When people say who's stronger, Azathoth or Superman, or Azathoth versus the one above all, What we're really saying is who wins, the one above all or, right? We're just saying like a meaningless word, a word that doesn't hold any weight in our mind, right? There's nothing to talk about. Like, so where are we? Azathoth is not the most powerful because Azathoth can't be defined by power. Some might think that makes him more powerful, but that is missing the point. Azathoth is beyond the question. You might say Azathoth is everything, but no, Azathoth is nothing. Nothing we say about Azathoth is true. Even saying nothing is not actually right, because the concept of nothing, he is beyond. Does this make sense? It's who wins, Superman or what's your answer to that? What's your answer? There is no answer. When we say, is Azathoth the most powerful, what we're saying is the most powerful. We then have to ask, well, what the heck was the thing you just said? Well, what do you mean? I can't answer that. I don't know what it is. That's exactly the point. So no, Azathoth is not the most powerful. It is simply nothing. In fact, it's not even nothing. I don't know how else to say it. I'm rambling so hard on this because I can't get my mind is breaking on this. I don't even know how to describe it to you, right? So, you know what? In the end, the answer is we are the strongest. Me and you. We're the writers. Nothing can beat us. Can Azathoth beat us? What does that mean? Anyway, that's the video. I know this one was a little bit different. It's not a tier list or like a fictional hypothetical. We were kind of just talking. It was a little bit of a lecture, but I thought it might be interesting to some of you guys. It is definitely interesting to me, and it was something I really just needed to get out of my head because, like many of the characters in H.P. Lovecraft's story, I was going insane thinking about it, right? So, there you go. I have now cursed you with knowledge. I'm going to end it here. So, just don't forget, we're not the only ones experimenting.